Hello everyone! Welcome to another virtual event with Mysterious Galaxy. I am Nick, the Director of Events for the store. Today, we have two wonderful authors here to discuss their books. One of them is celebrating their book birthday here in the States. We have Destiny, aka D.L Soria, as well as Evelyn Skye. Hello, you both!
Hello!
Hi!
And I just realized I messed up the name again. Soria.
It's okay.
I saw your face like, oopsies, we discussed it. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We, of course, are showing off the debut of Destiny's Thief, Liar, Lady, and I must say, that title just rolls off the tongue. I love it. Look at that. And, of course, we have Damsel by Evelyn Skye, who is actually, this is a staff pick of one of our booksellers. So she is probably watching in the shadows, very excited for this one. For those who put in their orders for a copy of Damsel, we already have some signed book plates from Evelyn Skye here. We'll match up with your book plates. But for those who order a copy of Thief, Liar, Lady, you can get a signed and or personalized copy. Personalized book plate, not copy of the book. Just make sure when you put in your order, you put it in the comments section what your personalization would like to be within reason. Because I'm pretty sure, you know, Destiny, you don't want to write a little mini novel on your book plates, right?
I mean, we'll see, you know.
If you're in the mood,
you might get lucky. Just sit down,
it's
turn
just
on
limited
Netflix.
by what can fit on a book.
Yeah, what can fit on the... If I can fit it on there, I'll do it for you.
D.L Soria is the
Soria.
author of... Soria.
Sorry.
Soria. Oh my god, I am the fool. Where is my dunce hat? You can put it on me right now. Well, she is the author of Thief, Liar, Lady, Iron Cast, Beneath the Citadel, and Fire with Fire. She lives with a clingy cat and spends her time trying to come up with bios that make her sound kind of cool. She has yet to succeed, as it says. Evelyn Skye is a New York Times best-selling author of books for adults, young adults, and children. Her novels include Damsel, which I just showed off, and which will soon be a Netflix film starring Millie Bobby Brown, Robin Wright, and Angela Bassett. Ooh. And the 100 Loves of Juliet. If you have any questions you would like to ask either, if not both authors later in the event, make sure there's a link below that says ask a question. Put your questions in there and I'll make sure to answer them later in the program. And if you're watching this live, if you want to get that personalized book plate from Destiny, make sure you get that order in by the end of day this Saturday with your personalizations. If you don't put personalization, we'll just assume you want signed only. All right, I'm going to pop back in later in the event, and I hope everyone has a good time. I'll see you both soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, Destiny, let's start with you because today is your launch day. It is your book birthday. Happy birthday! I'm not going to sing because no one wants me to sing.
Thank you.
But why don't you tell us what Thief, Liar Lady is about?
So Thief, Liar, Lady is a Cinderella retelling in which Cinderella and her quote-unquote evil stepfamily are actually con artists who are grifting the royal family. Sorry, that's my clingy cat. She's going to try to join us all night because her food already dropped, so now she has nothing else to satisfy her. So Thief, Liar, Lady is my first adult fantasy, which I'm very excited about. All my other 3 books were YA fantasies. So this is my foray into the adult world.
I love it. It's so good. I got to read it early, which is awesome. And Cinderella as a grifter is like, it's such a great idea that you're almost like, why has this not been done before?
I'm sure it probably has. Somebody has probably like written it before and done a great job. But yeah, when it kind of came to me, I was like, makes sense. I'm gonna do that.
Brilliant.
Oh, I was gonna tell you, I actually literally got this in the mail today.
Oh,
I was
what?
so excited
Is that
about
the
it.
Finished copy?
Yeah.
I don't have it yet.
Yeah, Del Rey. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm actually not surprised because lots of people got my finished copy before I got it. It's like super normal.
The first
but
time that for everyone who's on this book comes out August 1st.
It's beautiful.
And this is the first time I've seen it. Amazing.
It's beautiful.
Oh my God, I'm so
It's got
excited.
like the stars are like foil or like gold foil. It's very pretty.
I didn't know.
Yeah, it
Oh
just
my
like showed
gosh.
up on my doorstep today. Now
That's
I feel bad though
amazing.
that I got it
No,
before you did.
it's like my book's
Well,
birthday
you
too,
should
just
be
because
getting
you
yours
got
soon
it.
then.
Yeah, it should be.
You should be getting yours any day.
I know. I'm always the last one because I'm on the West Coast, and so like the distribution centers are on the East Coast, and so like everyone online ends up getting my book before I do. Like I have literally had release days happen before I have gotten copies of my book. I'm like, hey, cool. I'm
Oh my
glad the
gosh.
book's out there. I'm sure you'll love it.
I've never had that happen, but I have never been the first person to get my finished copy. I always see a picture of it online before
Yeah. Oh my
I
gosh.
see it, which is fine, but
Well, thank you. That was an amazing surprise. Yeah, so I can talk about both of those books. So
Yeah.
Damsel, this one is this is the one that's going to be a Netflix movie. It is about a woman who accepts a marriage proposal. She's from a poor country and she accepts a marriage proposal from a wealthy prince. But when she shows up at his magical, perfect utopian island, it turns out she's actually going to be sacrificed to a dragon. Because in order to maintain that utopia, the prince has to give up 3 royal lives. So he marries 3 princesses every year and just sacrifices them to the dragon. So that's how he maintains peace. So that's going to be a movie. Millie, my bud, Millie Bobby Brown's going to be Princess Elodie. So that goes there. And then The 100 Loves of Juliet, which is up there, which Destiny has and I don't, is out in 3 weeks on August 1st. Thank you. And that is a story. It's a reincarnation romantasy of Romeo and Juliet. So basically, it's soulmates across time. Romeo has never died. Juliet keeps being reincarnated over and over. And in every lifetime, they're doomed to meet, fall in love, and then he has to watch her die again. But maybe this time they can break the cycle. So those are my books.
Read your author's note when I got it, and it almost made me cry because I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but it's inspired by your husband, right?
It is, yeah. So my story is my husband. He had a terminal genetic disease, and so he was just days away from dying, but he received a double lung transplant. So that was like his second chance at life, and basically that was my inspiration for like, how do you love someone when you are watching them die and then you know that you might lose them at any time, but you make the most of that present. So it's actually such a beautiful and hopeful story. So yeah, and I see there's a link there. You guys can pre-order it now. And yes, anyway, let's talk more about your book. I want to know how you came up with this idea. And also, I want a quick pronunciation guide because anytime in fantasy, people don't know how to pronounce things. And I will also do a pronunciation guide for Damsel.
Good. Yeah, that's probably a good idea because I read Damsel recently, and I feel like there's some names that I was like, you know, when you're reading it, you don't have to know how to pronounce it. So you just, it's like in your head, it's just like.
Yeah, we were just joking in the green room before this that like sometimes we don't even realize, we don't really think through what it sounds like until the audiobook director asks us, can you record the names of these for the narrator? And we're like, yes, I can.
Sure. Theoretically, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us the names of the 2 kingdoms and the 3 main characters. Well, I guess I know how to pronounce Everett, but.
Okay, so Ash is the main character. Her alias that she goes by in the castle is Lady Ashlyn, which is spelled very interestingly because it's actually an Irish name. And then Rance's full name is Prince Varence. And the country that they live in is called Solus. And the country that Rance is from is called Illyria, and it is the country that has been basically colonized by Solus, and that's kind of one of the central tensions of the book. Is kind of looking at that conquered versus conqueror dynamic. The book itself, it really did like come from me just like thinking one day like, Cinderella would be like a good grifter. I love writing con artists. Ironcast and Beneath the Citadel are both like con artist heist type books. So I was thinking that, and I actually when I first conceived it, was thinking of it as a YA fantasy, because at that point I'd only written YA, and I was talking to my agent about it, and we had briefly mentioned me like wanting to break into the adult sphere, but I didn't really have any like ideas yet of how I wanted to do that. And so I was telling her this idea, and she was like, tell me if I'm crazy, but I feel like this is a perfect adult novel, because it's like what happens after the fairy tale ends, which really like lends itself more to like adults. And I was like, it was so funny, because up until that point I like had the idea, I liked the idea, I had like a few random paragraphs written in like my notebook, but it was just kind of sitting there. And like literally on the call when she said that, it was like the whole like first page just like came to me, and I was like, that's what was missing. It's an adult novel, and that's exactly what was missing. So it was very exciting. So we have my agent to thank for that, because without her, it probably would still just be like a bunch of random paragraphs in a notebook somewhere.
Good agents are so key. And, actually, this is a funny story related to Mysterious Galaxy. My current agent, she wasn't my agent when my first YA novels came out, but I was on tour and I was at Mysterious Galaxy in 2017, and she was in the audience incognito, not as an agent, just as a reader and a fan. And she told me that later, like after I had changed agents and signed with her, she's like, so I've actually seen you before. Because she's with she's in San Diego. Yeah.
It's so fun with agents.
I know.
Yes, please.
Okay, so
all the pronunciations.
So Elodie. I know some people say Elodie. I say Elodie. Henry is pretty easy. Prince Henry. Elodie is from Inofi. That is her desert-like country. And then Aurea is the golden kingdom of Aurea, which comes from the Latin root AUR, I think, which is related to gold. This is what I've been told. So I think that's it. Oh, but the tricky thing is that there's a dragon language in this book that was created for this book by my daughter, who is kind of a linguistic phenom. So if you like languages, there's an entire appendix that has like pronunciation guide. Then there's grammar guide. There's, where am I? There's verb conjugations somewhere in here too. There we go. Verb conjugations if you want to learn how to speak this language. And then there's like an abridged dictionary too. So you can actually go through the novel and decode the things that the dragon is saying. So that was really fun to get to work with her for that. So when the audiobook director, this time they're like, pronounce these things for me. And also, can you do every single line of the dragon's dialogue? And so my daughter, she invented this when she was 13 and she was 14 when she actually recorded every line of the dragon's dialogue so that the narrator could say it correctly. And I said to our audiobook director, so, she's a 14-year-old girl. She has a sweet little voice. So obviously the narrator can like put some oomph into it for a dragon.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But it's so cool that when I saw how old she was when I think you mentioned in the author's note how old she was, I was like, oh my God. Like when I was 13, I was like not doing that. I was not inventing languages when I was 13. Or if I was, they would have been like really bad, horrible, weird things that should not see the light of day.
So I thought actually what would be interesting to talk about is your story is, it's a spin-off from Cinderella, right? And then mine, Juliet, is about Romeo and Juliet. So like maybe we could talk about if we felt constrained by the original stories and how we worked. I think both of us kind of just like took them as almost like origin stories and then like, evolved. So like why Cinderella and where did you go? Did you feel like you had to like follow I don't know what it's Cinderella's just everywhere. Did you have to follow like the original story, or how free did you feel?
I didn't feel super constrained by it just because, like you said, it is everywhere. And I feel like at a certain point when something becomes so ubiquitous in society, it's almost like, it's a very foundational concept, the idea of Cinderella. The archetype of a Cinderella character has been around for ages and ages. Like earliest storytellers were telling the rags to riches stories So I didn't really feel that I had to follow the Disney version or the Grimm's Brothers version or anything super closely. I mean, I like read them. I read different versions of Cinderella, and there's some nods to like familiar retellings of it in the book, but I really did make it my own thing. And in a weird way, it was almost almost in conversation with like the Disney idea of Cinderella, especially like the live action, which I did like. I don't have any problems with the live action Cinderella, but to me, the concept of like just be kind, I was like, it is a good message. Like there's nothing wrong with that message, but also as a woman, I feel like I get told that a lot, and it makes me really angry sometimes, because sometimes that almost gets weaponized against women, against marginalized people, of like, what it really means is don't make waves, don't call people out on their bullshit, be quiet. And I don't like that twisting of the message. And so when I wrote Thief, Liar, Lady, it's about a woman who embodies the traditional concept of Cinderella, of sweet, quiet, perfect woman. But what she is doing is she's weaponizing that concept against patriarchy. And so for me, that's kind of what the core came down to. When I talked to my editor about it, before she had made the offer, you have like your call with potential editors, and they talk about like things they might want to change, and then you like tell them like, yeah, sure, I'd be willing to change that, or no, I wouldn't. And one of the things she asked was like, is there anything that you're worried about people wanting to change that you wouldn't want to? I was like, the only thing that I think of, and that I came onto this call in my brain of like, I will not cross this line, is I'm not going to make her nicer. She's not she pretends to be a nice person, but she's at her core not a super nice person. But she's driven by her own sense of like morality and justice, which to me is like a really important distinction. And so I was like, if any editor I talk to says, well, can we just make her a little bit nicer and more like quote unquote good, then I'm gonna pass on that, because for me it was really important to keep the core of her character where it is, kind of in this gray area of like, she's the protagonist, but like whether or not she's a hero is kind of up to the reader to decide.
Yeah. That's a really interesting perspective. And it's funny that you say she's not nice, because, obviously I've read the book. I'm like, I didn't think she's not mean or anything. She's clever. She's very smart. And I love that about her, because she plays the pretty happy princess so well, and underneath she's I wouldn't even say devious. I mean, devious maybe, but like with none of the negative connotation to it. She's just so good at what she's doing.
I mean, there's a point in the book, and it's not really a spoiler, where Everett like mentions to her that like, you seem different. You seem like you're angry. And she tells him, I think that you'll find that if you pay attention, most women are always angry. Which is like one of my favorite lines of the book, and almost was like I almost like stole it from like the Hulk from the Marvel movies, where he's like, my secret is that I'm always angry. Because I remember when I was watching the movie and he said that, I was like, it was something that stuck with me through like 2016, through all the like crazy stuff that has happened in the past like decade, of just like, sometimes I feel like my secret is that I'm always angry.
Well, I love how I love how you gave it to Ash and made it her weapon. I think that was very smart.
Thank you. I would like to hear about, well, 100 Lives of Juliet, but then also like Damsel. I think people would be really curious to know like how you because it's based on a script.
Yeah.
But I think you should talk about whichever one you want to talk about, or both of them.
I'll do both, and I'll keep it short so that we can have like balanced talking time. The 100 Loves of Juliet, based on it's inspired by Romeo and Juliet, but it's really kind of I think there's a lot of people who hate Romeo and Juliet because they think this is just kind of a dumb love story between a 13-year-old and like a 17-year-old. So but we're all basing it off of Shakespeare's version, and he actually cribbed the story from another writer, and we don't know how many versions maybe existed before or different versions. So I decided that we don't actually know the truth, and so maybe Shakespeare got it wrong. And so I've aged them up in the original story, and I just wanted to maybe do their romance justice and make it like a true soulmate, like epic love story. So that's kind of that. Like I said, I think of Romeo and Juliet as the origin story for that book. So anyway, I've talked enough about that one. Let's talk about Damsel, which is actually out now, because 100 Loves is out in 3 weeks on August 1st. So Damsel, that was an interesting project. Like I was just working away at the 100 Loves of Juliet, and also a middle grade. I don't know if Mysterious Galaxy has this one, but this is Princess Private Eye. It also came out this year. I've had kind of a crazy year. This was my first book out this year in April. This came out 2 weeks later in May, and that one's coming out in August. Anyway, so I was busy working on those other two books.
So many books.
I know. And then my agent got an email that Netflix wanted me to write a book for Millie Bobby Brown's movie, and I was like, she's like, do you think you'd be interested? Do you have time? I'm like, I don't even care. I have time. I was
like,
I don't know
can you say no if Millie Bobby Brown is involved?
Right? Exactly. And it felt like fate, because I'm like late to the Enola Holmes bandwagon. I had just watched it the week before, and then I got this email. So it's just like,
really?
What?
Oh my God, that's crazy. You manifested it.
I accidentally. So yeah, so Netflix was in the process of getting ready to make the film at the same time that they wanted a book, because all the filmmakers were actually huge fantasy book fans, and they'd grown up reading dragon stories, and they really wanted a book because they understood that books and movies can do stories just completely differently, right? Like in a book, you have 400 pages, so you can expand on the world and the characters, that they can have more backstory. So they wanted that. So they had a screenplay, which was in an early draft. I think I read, I don't know, second draft or something like that. So that's what I started basing the book off of. So the core story is the same. But from there, we basically started doing the movie and the book in parallel. So they were doing revisions of the screenplay while I started writing the book. And so, I read revisions of the screenplay as they were going on, but at some point, they had to make the film. I had to make the book. So there are some parts that diverge, which actually I think will be super fun for fans to like figure out what was different in the book and what's different in the movie. So yeah, that was super fun. And then I got to go on the movie set for a day, which was amazing. And they happened to be filming a scene which had made it through the early versions of the screenplay to the end. And so it was also in the book. And so I knew all the lines, like I had it memorized. And anyway, I was going to say something, but I'm not allowed to talk about the movie. So that's like, I'm on like silence promise until the movie comes out.
I'm really excited. I think it'll be really cool, like you said, to like see the differences. I've never been the kind of person who's like, the book was better or the movie was better or here's all the things that were different. I think it's cool. I think that it's, you get extra good things if they're different rather than being exactly the same.
You just have to think of them as different forms of entertainment, And I actually think that there are some adaptations, which I won't name names, but there are some that try to stay so faithful to the book. And then I was watching the movie or show, whatever it was, I'm not going to say, but I was just like, this is not good. Like the book was so good. And then they tried so hard to keep it loyal for the fans. And I'm like, this is not how the screen version should have been,
Well, yeah, because like screenplays have a completely different format than novels do. Like if you look at what like the traditional screenplay looks like the beats, it's different than what a traditional novel's beats are, because like you said, the novel you get 400 pages, screenplay you don't get that long. And they're like similar, but if you tried to follow it step by step, it's not going to work. And I feel like with Damsel, which I also have here,
yay,
starting my little Evelyn Skye collection. I feel like with Damsel, like so much of it was, which I really liked, was being inside Elodie's head while she's like kind of trying to like escape this dragon, trying to figure out how she's going to survive. I really liked all the stuff. Like I wasn't expecting it to like, it was different than I expected, because like so much of it is like her surviving in the caves, which I really love those kind of survival stories. And I have like a weird fascination with like caves. Like my favorite horror movie is Descent. Um, so I was
So
like
it
the
was
whole time I
basically
was
like the
watching
perfect
it.
Destiny book.
Yeah. But yeah, like I was like but like the movie would never be able to be the same because
Yeah,
it would just be
into
Millie
the head.
Bobby Brown's voiceover the whole
Internal
time, and that
log.
would be
Yeah,
very
exactly.
strange for a
Yeah,
movie.
it'd be very strange.
But
Very
it works
strange.
perfectly for the book.
Exactly. So yeah, that was fun. That's kind of my story of how I did that. But also your cover. I want to talk about the cover because I feel like this is something that readers are always interested in. Like the cover is beautiful. The title also I'm interested in. Was that always the title? And also, what was the process of coming up with this cover? Did you have input? Did you go through multiple rounds? That was kind of a weird sudden
So the
transition.
title
Sorry,
has
I was
always
just excited.
No, I get what you're saying. The title has always been the title. I don't even really This is one of my books that I didn't have to think up the title. I didn't have one for the longest time, and then one day I was doing something that was not even related to the book, just like living my life, and my brain was just like thief, liar, lady. That's it. That's the title. And I was like, perfect. Thank you, brain, for
Nice.
doing what you're supposed to
Nice.
do for once. So yeah, so that has always been the title. The cover was like a really fun surprise. Like they did like ask for my thoughts, initially, but like, any author will know that like whatever your initial thoughts are probably not going to be what they go with because the marketing people are the marketing people for a reason and you're the author for a reason. And that's what I always tell them. I'm like, here's some stuff, here's some books that I really like the covers and I think could like vibe well, but also I do not know anything about design, so you
Yes,
should
me
probably
too.
just do what you think is best.
Yeah,
But no,
I
I
agree. Like
really, when they first
it's
showed
so
it to
hard.
me, I was like, it's perfect. I really like the trying to think of a way to phrase this without spoilers, because my best friend when we first saw like the finished cover, she was like,
while you're
it
telling.
doesn't look like a she was like, it doesn't look like a book where a bunch of people die. And I was like, then I guess we like pulled off the biggest con of all, right?
Yes.
We're going to fool you into reading this book where a bunch of people die. But I won't tell you who.
Yes, exactly. It's the heroine. The book's over on page 2.
The end. Actually, the entire
end.
book is just like my like diary about my cat. So that's all you get if you buy it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So like the cover basically looked like that or very close from the very start?
Yeah, I mean pretty similar. The idea was the same. Like there was different it shifted, like the colors changed, and like originally there was like a lot more going on. And then we kind of got to the point where they're like, actually it feels like way too busy and I feel like we're losing the like vision of it. So then they really simplified it, and I think as soon as they simplified it to just like this beautiful backdrop, hold it up again, this beautiful backdrop of like the palace and then just the staircase and the two people and then the representation of like the magic in the book. And I was like, I think that really is like what you need to capture it, and I think it gives like a really good idea of the kind of what's the word that I'm thinking of, like the romanticism of the concept. But then the fact that like the characters, I really appreciated that they like specifically put distance between Ashlyn and Everett on the cover because they were like, we want to like give like a hint that something's not quite right, and then obviously like the magic swirling up between them. So I really appreciated all the thought that went into the cover.
Yeah.
You can always tell when the people who designed it like really like read the book and like thought about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, it was kind of the same with 100 Loves of Juliet. Like we played around with the fonts. There were different fonts and like the colors were slightly shifted, but otherwise it's pretty much the same. The stars, the silhouettes of the past lives that you can kind of like barely see on there. But with Damsel, we went through a whole bunch of iterations, and that was because it was not just like me and the publisher, it was also Netflix. And so the process just took longer when you have that many people. And also we just went through, some like pretty dramatic different changes. And I'll just tell you that the first version I kindly barfed all over because I was like, but they made it so much better, so it's all good. It's all good.
That's funny. I feel like every author has been there at some point with some iteration of a cover where you're just like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I
but
was just, like,
also
as
for
you were
me,
talking,
I
I was like, wait.
What
I had
did
to
you
like
just
look at
notice?
the cover. And I see the silhouettes now. You were saying like the silhouettes in the back, and I was like, wait, I didn't see that before, and now I do. And I also really like the foil. I like any kind of foil on a book. It's beautiful.
I didn't even know they were going to foil
it's hard to
it.
see,
That
but
is
it's very
so
pretty.
awesome. Yeah, the silhouettes on Juliet, like one of the versions that they had, the silhouettes were really strong. And it was that same comment you talked about where we were like, I think it's too busy. Because when we got the star, we had 100 stars for the 100 Loves. And then the silhouettes were so clear. And I was like, it almost looks like sci-fi with like these strong like silhouettes. I don't know why I thought sci-fi. So we faded it that when you look at it, you kind of just get the impression of watercolor until you really look at it and they're like, oh, there's silhouettes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely the first time I saw it. It has a very watercolor feel.
Yeah, it's very pretty. It's really interesting just because my publishers in different territories are doing completely different covers. So this is the first time that's happened for me. Usually my publishers just do all the exact same cover. So yeah, it's kind of cool. I would show you, except
It's really exciting when you get your first different.
Yeah, the UK ARC doesn't have the cover on it. It's there. But they did this for it's like a teaser. So throughout centuries, across continents, she will never stop searching for him. It's like got gold foil because the UK, they just throw money around for ARCs and put foiling on the ARCs. And
my God. So. Yeah, I wish I had my art over here. It was the same thing where it's like a completely different cover, but it's like super pretty. Like, I'm like, you didn't have to go that hard, UK, on the ARC, but you did.
Yeah, no, I remember they're amazing. But anyway, what else can we talk about? I was going to ask how much of yourself you put into your characters, but you already told us about like being angry and giving that to Ash. Like how do you steal people from your real life and put them in your characters, or do you kind of make them up completely out of whole cloth?
I think for the most part, I make them up full cloth. I think there probably have been pieces of people. Like I can think of a few characters in other books that I kind of drew slight inspiration from people that I know, but I don't ever like actually write people that I know. One fun fact about Thief Liar Lady is that there is a very good dog in there named Puppy. And she's actually named for my family's first family dog. He was a little mutt named Mr. Tubbs. But when we were kids, when we were babies, we couldn't pronounce Mr. Tubbs, and so we just always called him Puppy, and that became his name.
Aww.
And so yeah, so it's funny when my mom read the book and she called me and was like, "Was Puppy named after our puppy?" And I was like, "Yeah, obviously."
Yeah, I love that. That's so sweet. I put all of my friends, my best writer friends' names are in the 100 Loves of Juliet. But I told them that just because I put your name in there doesn't mean like you're like that character. So, but yeah, it's fun. Like when they read it, they'll find them and it'll be like Easter eggs. But yeah, Damsel, I put obviously a lot of myself into the 100 Loves of Juliet because it's based on mine and my husband's kind of like love story, but also it's Romeo and Juliet. So, I'm not immortal. I'll spoil that right now. But Damsel is, it's kind of based on, it's based on a screenplay, right? So it's like, it's got to follow those characters, but I got to expand. I got to create more backstory for people. So it wasn't so much that I tend to also just create characters kind of from whole cloth, but I try to make them really complex. And so like in the book Damsel, the prince and the queen of Aurea, they struggle actually with this problem of having to sacrifice lives, but to them it's kind of like, well, we can sacrifice 3 lives and save our entire kingdom, or we don't sacrifice those 3 lives, but then the dragon rains hellfire on all of us, our crops are destroyed, our people die, or we go to war with the dragon and hundreds of thousands of people die. And so it's this moral dilemma, and that weighs on them. And I enjoyed getting into the queen's head, the prince's head, as they dealt with that kind of issue.
Yeah, and I also really appreciated the relationship between Elodie and her sister. And I mean, I always love a good sister relationship. I have one or two really in Thief, Liar, Lady. But I also really, even more than that, like the relationship with her stepmother. I won't like spoil anything, but I thought it was really, the fact that it wasn't what you saw at first glance is what I really like about relationships, is when like the way that you think people are is actually not the same as like what their inner life is and like their motivations. And sometimes you have to take a second look and really get to know them. And I really liked that.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're getting close to questions from the audience. So I guess I'm just going to ask you, what's next? What can we see next from you? I'm guessing more in this world.
Yeah, I have another adult fantasy coming out with Del Rey. It's not set in this world. It's actually, I call it my pandemic book because I wrote it during the second half of the pandemic, and it is a witchy rom-com. So it's like a completely different thing than I've ever written before, because when I wrote it, I was just writing it for me to like survive the pandemic. And then when I like told my editor about it, she was like, "Ooh, let's do that one." I was like, "Okay,
nice,
sure."
Awesome, very cool. And then obviously for me, 100 Loves of Juliet is out in 3 weeks, so that's that. And anyone who's in San Diego, I will be at Comic-Con, so I hope to see you there.
Yay! Which we will be heavily at next week, so we hope to see everyone there. All right, it is the audience question time. I already see there's a couple questions there. As a reminder, you see a link below that says Ask a Question. You can submit your questions there, and we'll be asking them very shortly. But I wanted to start with my own question, because I love to find out from authors a little bit about the craft side. So, Destiny, how long would you say that it took for you to write Thief, Liar, Lady? Was it off and on? And do you like to do outlines or no?
Once I got started on it, I think it was probably like 4 to 6 months. It was my first half of the pandemic book, so I won't pretend like I remember a whole lot of it happening.
It's a blur, for sure.
But yeah, it was a few months. Once I got started on it, I just kind of sat down and was like, I knew that's what I wanted to write, so I wrote it. What was the other question?
Oh yeah, no
Speaking
worries.
Of pandemic brain.
And was it just the continuous 4 to 6 months, or was it off and on between then? And do you outline, or did you outline for this?
Everything that I write is a little bit off and on because I have a day job that I have to work, so that will always take up. And so, you don't always feel like writing after an 8-hour workday, because writing is almost its own full-time job. So
Totally.
Everything I write is a little bit off and on, but I do not outline. I am what is known as a pantser. I just write by the seat of my pants and see what happens. So I go by the age-old adage of write drunk, edit sober.
I love that adage. Those are always the most fun reads, in my opinion. And what about you, Evelyn? How was writing Damsel? How long did it take? Was it off and on? And do you outline?
Okay, I am a plotter, so I do outline. I used to be a pantser, but I would write things and the whole book would go sideways, and I'd end up having to throw the entire thing away. Then I'd write a second draft. My editor would be like, yes, for the first 50%, so I'd throw the second half away. So I just learned, you know what? It's going to be more efficient if I just think it through from the beginning and get my editor's sign off. Damsel was super intense. Netflix contacted me at the end of January of next year, and I think I had the entire book done through 3 rounds of revisions by June or July. But that was just, I'm full-time. I write full-time. So it was basically lock myself in the room, no one come in from the moment I drop my kid off at school and come home until I have to go pick her up. That is it. My husband knows if he comes in here, I will give him like a death glare. So there's no talking to me at lunch when I'm doing in like drafting mode, because lunch means I'm just thinking through the things I've been working on, and so he knows like just tiptoe, because he works from home too. So that was super fast. It was also faster because it was based on a screenplay. So someone had basically already laid out the plot for me, and plot is my hardest thing. That's where I always get tripped up. So the plot I knew had to pretty much go this way with only small divergences. And then I got to play in the sandbox however I wanted with the character. So that was super fun. And then Juliet was probably 4 to 6 months-ish of like straight work. And then, revision kind of just it's spread out over time because you're waiting for your editor. So you're just kind of sitting around, or you just decide to write other books in the meantime. So that's like, I think all in all, like a year from beginning until it goes to copy edits.
Very fair. All right, let's dive into our audience questions. First one up. Looks like it's for both of you. Doesn't specify, so I'm going to say it's both. First for Destiny, then. Is classic literature, fairy tales, Shakespeare, often sources of inspiration for you?
I'll say yes, just because I think that the like archetypes that we draw from, especially from fairy tales, also from classic literature. I was an English major in college, so once you become an English major, it kind of just gets baked into like a level of your brain. So I don't think that I would ever be able to not be inspired by it on some level. But a lot of times it's the way that it inspires me is that I am writing my opposition against it. Of like, here is why I think this was wrong.
But it's still an inspiration nonetheless. I love it. What about you, Evelyn?
This is the first time I've done it. I don't tend to personally like rewriting fairy tales. So this was, I don't know, Romeo and Juliet came to me and I was like, yeah, I have to do it. But I've had people online talk about this series. This is what the Crowns Game series. This is what I was on tour at Mysterious Galaxy for back in 2017. People have said this is a Cinderella retelling. I was like, yeah, really? Cool. I didn't know that, but awesome.
I can see that, but
it's a little bit maybe
only in the way that, yeah.
I was gonna say it's a little bit maybe like what you were saying though, because I was also a literature major in college, and it just kind of seeps in, and you don't realize. Like sometimes authors end up putting themes into books, and they don't realize it's there until afterwards when you read through it, or someone points it out, and you're like, oh my gosh, that is there, and that is something like a core thing that I believe in.
Oh yeah, because especially as creators, authors, you have to take so much inspiration. You have to like take inspiration and take all this stuff in order to like create your own ideas. So it's not a surprise that a little bit of chunk doesn't get fully, minced, and a good chunk pops out like, oh, that's recognizable, but it's still, a chunk.
Exactly.
All right, thank you for that question. Next, question for both of you. Was there anything that was cut from your books that you wish was in the final edition, that you wish did not hit the editing floor? Destiny.
Nothing that I like regret not being in there, because I think that my editor made the right call, which is why she's my editor. But I did have a lot. There's some flashbacks in the book back to like the 3 nights of the ball where she first made Everett fall in love with her. And so originally I had a flashback to like each night individually, and I spent a lot of time like coming up with like what the nights were like, what happened, what was going on. And so like I really liked that, but in the end it was like, it's too much. We need to just cut it back, and like nobody like cares about all these little details that have nothing to do with the rest of the book. So it was the right call, but I did enjoy writing about, who doesn't like writing about like pretty balls and dresses and decorations and stuff.
What about you, Evelyn?
I think for me, for Damsel, I had the opposite problem where I put things in and I had to wait, and I was terrified that Netflix was going to tell me to take it out because it was going to be different from the movie. And, they had promised me at the very beginning that I could do this my way. I didn't have to make a straight adaptation copy of the screenplay. But I was so nervous the whole time because there are some things I changed where I'm like, I don't know if that's going to fly. But they let me keep everything. So was really, really, really happy. Netflix was awesome to work with, and
oh, that's great to hear. Thank you for that question. Next, we have what is something you enjoy about writing in the fantasy genre? Let's switch it up and have Evelyn go first.
I like that it's an escape from the real world, and I just get to play in my head all day. Like, I can't believe that my job is that I just get to make stuff up. I almost said a bad word there. Just, this is a family show. So I get to make stuff up for a living and tell stories, and that's amazing. That is literally what I get to do, and people buy my books and they like them. Thank you for liking my books. So that's what I love.
It's great. It's a great point. What about you, Destiny?
For me, it's not having to follow the rules of like the real world. I really admire contemporary writers or writers who like write contemporary novels, because I'm like, how do you like do your whole plot and have everything happen and not have like a dragon or magic or something like just kind of pop in? Because I get bored with the real world. I don't get bored reading contemporary novels, but I get bored writing them. So I really like being able to just like make things up. I mean, like I said, I'm a pantser, so I like to make it up as I go along. And I like that fantasy lets me make up literally anything that I want.
That does bring up a really good question. How do you know when to hold yourself back from doing whatever you want? Because I, the sky's the limit, but how do you know, like, wait a minute, no, I really shouldn't for this book, even though you could, like, kind of, you can say the same thing. How do you limit your magic system or anything like that? When do you know, like, okay, this is enough?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, the magic system. That's actually tricky because for me, I love creating this really cool magic. And then after the first draft, my editor will say, like, okay, here's all these holes. And my instinct is to plug up the holes with more magic, right? And then you get to the third round, and she's like, okay, and now in your new magic, there's these holes. Like, well, let's do more. And the answer is actually always pull back and simplify, because you're just going to keep creating more problems.
That is so true. Yeah. For me, it's, I guess the way that I craft my worlds is the same way I craft my magic systems, which is just that, like, everything has to make a kind of logical sense. It has to have a cause and effect to it, because that's just the way that, like, physics works. I mean, I guess theoretically you could write a book where physics isn't a thing, but for me, it's always like having the touchstones, because if you throw a reader into a book where everything is different from what they know, and they don't have any touchstones to like go back to, then they're basically just reading gobbledygook at that point. And I don't think that very many people like that. I think there's probably some postmodern authors who do that very well. But if you're just writing genre fiction, you kind of have to keep it to a point where the reader can be like, okay, I don't really know what's going on, but I know what this is and I know what this is, so I can like put the pieces together.
I love when magical worlds do have rules that just hold things together, even if it's like weird, crazy rules. Like, oh, if you make a deal with the fairy can't break the deal. Duh, it's binding. Even though they're all powerful, of course they have to follow what the rules are. All right, thank you for that question.
Well, I think that some authors think of it as like oh, I gotta follow the rules for the magic. But for me, it can make the plot even more interesting if like something happens and you're like, oh, but what about this rule? And then you gotta find a way around that, and magic can't be the answer, because it's like that's the rule, so you gotta find a non-magical way to get around it. And for me, that's like half the plot sometimes.
That's when you're definitely testing yourself and your characters, when you're like, well, okay, this is such a situation where magic can't fix all your problems. So that's the real test. I love that. All right, unless anyone else puts any more questions in, here is our last one from the audience. Who's your favorite female? I love this one. Who's your favorite female fantasy protagonist from your childhood? Whoever wants to take this one first.
I have this weird memory gap, and I don't remember chunks of my childhood. My family's always making fun of me. They're like, did you go to elementary school? Yes, I think so. Did you go to middle school? Pretty sure. So maybe you have to go first while I try to like go through the mental file system.
Okay. I feel like it's the kind of thing where somebody asks you, like, what's your favorite book? You're just, like, immediately like, I've never read a book in my entire life. I don't know what you're talking
what
about.
Would you recommend?
I like, nothing. I don't read. I don't write. I know nothing. I actually do have an answer to this one, though, because somebody recently posted a story about, like, Thief, Liar, Lady with, like, the cover, and we're like, this one is for all the Ella Enchanted girlies. And I was like, oh my god, because, like, I was an Ella Enchanted girly. It was the first book that ever made me cry. It was the first book that I read it until it literally fell apart, and my mother had to buy me another one because I was so upset. So, like, it was... So, like, Ella was, like the foundational female character for me. So that one's easy for me. Although if I hadn't seen that post recently, I probably would have been like, I don't remember any books that I read when I was a kid. What's reading?
Yeah, I don't either. I'm gonna cheat. I can think of my favorite fantasy mouse, which is not the question, but I love the Redwall series.
Yes.
When I was a kid. Surely there was a girl mouse in there.
What's her name, Mrs. Norris? No. In Redwall. Oh gosh, she's
Perhaps.
female. She's a
I don't
female
know.
protagonist.
Or was that the Rats of Nim? I don't know.
Or was it? Yes. Is it? I don't know. You're right. Rodents.
It is too late. Goodbye.
All right. Well, I think that's it for questions. Evelyn and Destiny, thank you so much for being here and talking about your books. Again, congratulations, Destiny, on the release of Thief, Liar, Lady.
Thank you.
And Evelyn, very much looking forward to the eventual release of the 100 Loves of Juliet. Remember, everyone, you can still pre-order through Mysterious Galaxy, and you can also get your own copies of Damsel right now as well. If you do an order right now for Damsel, you can get your own very much signed book plate while supplies last. And if you're watching this live, you have until the end of the week, about end of day Saturday, to put in your orders for Thief, Liar, Lady if you want personalization. Any orders after that, we'll just make sure you get a signed book plate. It's all good. You'll still get something. So thank you so much. And before we go, where can people find you both on social media if they want to know what's new and happening with you?
My Instagram and TikTok handles are the same, Evelyn_Skye. I'm new to TikTok. Like, I literally started a week ago, so, I'm learning that thing. But I'm on Instagram, and my newsletter is evelynskye.substack.com. And actually, if you sign up tonight, a free excerpt of The 100 Loves of Juliet is dropping tomorrow morning.
Make sure you do
so
that.
So it's evelynskye.substack.com.
How about you, Destiny?
I am on Instagram. I'm on Instagram and just recently Threads, and you can find me both at the Destiny Soria.
All right. Well, thank you so much for you both. I hope you have a great
evening. Thank you for having us. It's super fun, and thanks everyone.
It was so much fun.
And everyone who's tuning in, thank you so much. Whether you're watching this live or in the future, I hope you have a great day and happy reading. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.